Hello again, Dan Alasso here with History for Today. And today I want to talk about a little bit of history, although I will continue, as I've been doing, talking about the tools and apps that I am using to get at this history and then to make it available to my students. So I'm taking notes on Craig Childs' book, Atlas of a Lost World. And since this is not only a print book, but also an interlibrary loan that I got from the BSU library, it's not something that I can highlight and I can write notes in the margin of the book itself. So I had to read the old-fashioned way. And I had to put little post-it notes where I wanted to go back and to record notes or comments on what I had read. But this isn't entirely true. I had first actually listened to the audiobook version of the Child's book while walking, which I found extremely enjoyable and interesting. Childs actually narrated the audiobook himself, which I always like. And since the content of this narrative jumps back and forth from the archaeology to Childs' own personal experience, trekking in the regions that he describes, or talking to other researchers, having him tell the story was especially effective. So I was actually very familiar with the text when I got my hands on this hard copy, and it was a pretty quick process for me to scan the pages and to tag the things that I wanted to make note of. And this is the first aside about technology. I have not entirely settled on a foolproof method for getting notes that I make on all the audios that I'm listening to while I'm walking into my workflow. But the situation has improved very dramatically lately. Typically, I've been stopping my walk and getting my reading glasses out and stopping the audio and shifting over to voice memos so I could briefly say something, and then going back to the audiobook. Now, though, Audible has included a capability for me to what they call clip and bookmark as I'm listening. And this is a huge advantage, as I can now easily go back to both the note that I had made, which it actually transcribes for me, and that's very nice, and also to the part of the text that I had commented on, and I can listen to that again. And since I most always have the Kindle version of the book that I'm listening to as well, if it is a book that's important to my research, then I can also actually see the list of what they call bookmarks, which are also at this point now transcribed from the audio, and also my comments. And this makes it extremely easy for me to review the passage of the text and get my reactions into my note-taking workflow. Very much easier than having to review what oftentimes becomes a long list of voice memos, which ironically are only tagged with the location where I was when I had made them. And this can get a bit strange, especially if I let a lot of time pass between when I make the note and when I then process it. On the other hand, I'm being a bit of a big baby here, right? It's still extremely cool that I can record my thoughts on the fly in any format at all. And so I really shouldn't be complaining about the fact that I have to think a bit about them on the other end when it's time to put them in the notes. The point is, after all, to think about them. And actually, I find this process of having the audiobook and the Kindle together to be so valuable, and I was so impressed with Childs' book and convinced that I will probably return to it in the future, that after I got the print copy through interlibrary loan and tagged it, I actually bought the ebook and the Audible companion. The audio had originally been available to me as part of my Audible membership and had been recommended to me by Audible, so thanks for that, Audible, because I wouldn't have found it otherwise. But I was unsure how long that would last. So I actually spent the $7.49 to add the audio to my collection permanently and to have it connected to the Kindle. But since I had already been looking at the print book and tagging it, I went ahead with that process and read through the tags that I had made there. And there were a lot of them because I'm going to use either Childs' own account or some of the sources that he cites to add to my chapter in my American Environmental History textbook that deals with the first Americans. That coverage actually was more or less current when I originally wrote that part of the book. But in the intervening 5 years, A lot of new evidence has come to light, and several theories that were being considered very skeptically by the archaeology profession at that time have gained a lot more credence. And actually, a couple of people watching the YouTube videos that I've made for my class lectures have actually questioned me on this. So a revision was more than due. The way that I'm processing these notes is to read through the book, picking the tabs off as I go along. And I reconsider the information that I tagged, and then I either move on if I no longer want to use it, which happens occasionally, or I write something about it in a page that I've started for the reading notes on the book in Obsidian. And as I'm making these notes, I'm also making additional blank pages for many of the researchers and other authors that Childs cites. And sometimes I'm opening another window and getting quick links to information that I can use when I study these people further, when I'm done taking the notes and I'm beginning to fill in that information. If an article or a book is mentioned, I may try to find it either in JSTOR or elsewhere online, or I may order the book via interlibrary loan. As I do this, I'm trying also to create a research bibliography in Zotero, complete with the PDFs if I can grab them quickly and easily. I'll go through these when I am getting ready to write my own addendum to my chapter to see if there are any other additional points that these original authors have made that I think are relevant or interesting. Typically, this process will involve reading abstracts carefully and then quickly scanning the academic articles. I'm not necessarily super interested in all of the details that an archaeological study is going to include. Although, if it's a new article by somebody like Tom Dillahay, the principal writer about Monteverde, I will probably read it much more closely, because you never know what type of cool stuff he may have uncovered. But I am also interested in verifying what Childs has said before endorsing it in my own textbook, and also in providing a more complete bibliographical trail for my own readers, although I will also recommend Atlas of a Lost World as a place for them to seek more information at the end of my chapter. So that's a brief glimpse of how I am getting my notes out of an actual print book and into Obsidian so that I can use them as reading notes. The next step beyond this will be making more permanent notes that will be some of the statements that I'll probably end up making in my revision of the chapter. And I'll go over that when I do it. But in the meantime, that is all for now. So I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.